All right, we're back in the studio with another entrepreneur in the tech side of things. This is Gabe Lanzano, founder of Lockerdome, which, if you haven't heard about, is a social networking site, very successful, fast-growing social networking site for sports fans. So back to the Cardinal corny analogy in the beginning there, a lot of people probably tuning into Lockerdome tonight, which I don't think tune in is what you do on the web, but I'm going to move on from this introduction. Thanks for being here, Gabe. Tell me what you've heard so far in tonight's conversation in terms of how you see St. Louis. What is the current state of affairs in St. Louis?
Look, I've heard a lot of good stuff. People are talking a lot about build first, build a great deal, and let the money follow that. I could not agree more with that. The one kind of light I like to shed every time, I always say that, let's focus on reality, which is there's a lot of good stuff going on right now, better than probably any of us have ever seen, but we have a lot more to go. I would describe it as if this was a video game, we're going from level 1 to level 2, and it's a game of many levels. So as we kind of look forward, we keep that in mind, that kind of interesting progress today, but we have to let that momentum create new momentum.
A word that you've used when you and I have talked before is deal flow, and we heard Joe say deal flow. Can you just give us a primer? What are you talking about when you say deal flow?
Sure. So when an investor is looking in a scene, they're saying what companies are available, what entrepreneurs are available for me to plow capital into so I can get a return on my investment. And that's the issue right now. It's not an issue of money. There's an enormous amount of wealth in St. Louis. The issue is fundable companies that are going to return that money so that the fund can exist 8-10 years from now and they get a next fund to plow new money back in. And that is the piece that I put a lot of attention on. The things that we talk about, the nonprofit stuff that I work on, it says what creates a great deal. And for me, when I look at that, I think there's 3 components to that. One's people. So we hear a lot of people talk about top tier talent. Agreed with that. But the other pieces are not talked about nearly as much, which is product. Get somebody past the idea stage and actually output a product that you can test. Sam Walton always said, do more of what works, less of what doesn't. You can't get there unless you actually get a product into a market. And the third is density. So a lot of these companies will actually fail. Getting those entrepreneurs to go right back into the ecosystem and work for the companies that are scaling is important. And when the companies win, so we mentioned the Square type wins, the Twitter type wins, we believe Lockerdome will be one of those wins. That cash and that talent needs to actually be recycled back into the ecosystem so it can work. And that whole front end of the funnel is where you play. So if you have a strong front end, you will create great deal flow, you will create resources that can let the ecosystem work.
So how is Lockerdome doing, and do you have what you need in St. Louis to take that next step to get up on the levels of the video game?
Well, in under 2 years, we've gone from nothing to over 19 million people a month use our website. In the last month, we went from 14 million to 19 million. So I would say we've made really good progress. We always have a long way to go. Right now, we're in the middle of focusing on launching the next version of Lockerdome. Resource-wise, of course, from a cash standpoint, the last round we were vastly oversubscribed. We ended up turning down quite a bit of capital and took what we needed, and the bulk of that money was from St. Louis. So the cash is not a problem here. The talent's not a problem here. I'd put our team against anybody. It's just continued execution.
Where do you get your talent? St. Louis, elsewhere?
The 4 of our last 6 hires actually came from outside of St. Louis. But there is a lot of talent here that we have taken from other companies.
Do you see talent? This is something I believe is popping up on Twitter right now. Do you see talent in St. Louis leaving St. Louis? And if so, what do we do to keep that here?
It does. And Cliff Holcamp, who will be on the show later, he always says people will stay or leave for community, which I agree 100% with. When people leave St. Louis, it's because they're going towards somebody else's community. They'll leave without a job. They'll go to Silicon Valley, they'll go to New York because they want that community. People are starting to stay though. The people that are actually exposed to a Lockerdome or to these other great companies that are being built, they're saying, that's special, and I want to be part of that. So we see today way more talent stay in St. Louis and becoming part of the ecosystem than we have before.
Have you considered leaving? Is Lockerdome looked in Silicon Valley or looked at New York?
A couple years ago, I would have said I'm 99% sure that we were going to leave St. Louis. Today, I would say there's no chance. We'll open satellite offices. We just opened one in New York. So we do that as needed, but this is our home. We have the talent here, we have the cash here, we grow like crazy here, and people talk about cost effectiveness. That is important in a startup. It's not the number one most important thing, but it's absolutely important. We've been able to do all of those things and create an extraordinary amount of value in St. Louis.
The last time we talked about this on the show, a theme that emerged was that so much had changed in St. Louis in the past 6 months. That was 6 months ago. How would you describe this past 6 months?
It just escalated. Momentum creates momentum. I mentioned that earlier. And every time that you see progress made and more people jump off the sidelines, it just feels exponential. That happens in a company, it happens in an ecosystem. So I look around, it's not surprising to me. It's what we expect. And 12 months from today, as St. Louis continues to execute, and 12 months from today for the Lockerdomes and the Earbuds and the other great companies in St. Louis, as they continue to execute, everything you see today, everything we're talking about today will feel like child's play.
So is it easy for those, if there is another Lockerdome in their garage somewhere, is it easy for them to access everything we're talking about tonight if they just heard the word deal flow for the first time, but they've got a great idea, a great product in the pipeline?
Well, if they have a great idea, build it. But if they have a great product actually built and they want to demo it to us, you can reach out to people like myself or anybody else in the ecosystem, and people will actually respond, and they'll get you engaged, and they'll try and find ways that you can actually be successful. The access is very, very easy in St. Louis.
And I've heard that when people have talked about the benefit, although it costs a lot to be in Silicon Valley, is that you do bump into a Jack Dorsey at lunch. Is there that kind of density here and accessibility in St. Louis?
Pixel Press is a company that was mentioned earlier. I had never heard of them other than seeing a quick video about them online with the crowdfunding stuff. About a month ago, they pitched me. The very next day, I was walking 100 feet down the street, and one of them was outside having coffee, pitching somebody else. Give a quick wave. So that is happening. A lot of it's actually happening in downtown St. Louis.
So when people say we're a big, small town, it can be a good thing.
It can be a great thing.
Very good. Well, all right.